So I'm gonna go from lowest to highest when we look at these mount sub positions, and the first one comes off of a low mount. Low mount is anytime I sort of jam my feet in deeper, I take my knees like off the floor, and I'm sort of skydiving on my person. The reason that this is a little better than just hanging out on my knees is he feels more of my pressure. There's pros and cons to both, of course, but when I put my legs in here, especially when I bite at the butt or when I cross my feet, it becomes hard to elbow escape. It's hard to trap and roll because I can use my hands for base here. So that's low mount, okay, which is sort of a precursor to the position that we're going to talk about today, which is this one here. If I can ever put my head in his armpit and catch his arm up over his head, and now I'm trying to keep my head against his head to keep his arm trapped in there, and it should be very hard for him to get his arm away from me. It's just all the way extended at the shoulder joint, and my head's against his head, so it's pinched in, and he can't move his head either because this one's under his neck. So this is a very, very good control position, and it's the head and arm setup position, and that's because we can do a head and arm choke from here. There are other things that you can do from here and other things that come up when you're in this position, but I want you guys to get to this position, so we're going to do this again. From a regular mount, I want you guys to experience low mount, so I want you to take your knees off the ground and insert your feet. You can cross your feet, or you can just bite your heels to the ceiling. Crossing your feet is a nice easy one, but whatever you do, you want your heels close to their butt. Your feet are just harder to find here. And from here, we're just going to say I'm going to get my head into his armpit on the ground. My other arm comes under his neck, and I'm going to try to catch his arm in this crook of shoulder and head that I have as I put my head against his head. And you should feel, bottom person, that you are, especially if my knees are off the ground, carrying my weight, which is uncomfortable. And now, can you get your arm back or back to the ground? No, and I'm not doing a lot with muscle or power. Once I get into this position, it's a good attack position for me. He's in some deep trouble here. Let's have you guys first get into this position. Now you've all sat in this position, and maybe you even felt that there was pressure, like choke type pressure. But I would say that commonly we don't finish this choke exactly from here. But if you caught this position for mount, the way that I finish the head and arm choke is to dismount. Actually, I want to lay beside the person because I want to get my hips closer to the mat than I can from here. And I can also change my angle if I dismount. So I'm here, and I've got his head, his arm is pinned here. I'm trying to keep our heads together. That's going to be vitally important for the whole move. Okay. The way that I dismount matters. I'm going to post onto my active toes, lift my hips up, and I'm going to cut one knee across. You see how I'm cutting across here until I'm beside him. And now I can get my hips all the way to the ground. Okay, so one more time. Step one, after establishing this position, to finish a head and arm choke, for me is to dismount. I'm going to have you guys tripod, and then drive your knee to the cross side. And my shin slides right across his belly, and I go to here. I'm doing it slow motion. If I was actually doing it, I would just post, cut, and then lay down here. And now we have 1, 2, 3. We have a few ways that I can make this grip deeper. And I do want it to be as deep as possible, because if this is loose, then there is no kind of choke here. So I want this arm as tight against the far side of his neck as possible, and my pressure into the near side through his arm finishes the choke on the near side. So when this is in here, let's say it's not as deep as I want it, which is common. A few things I can do. One, I can finger walk, so I can literally walk my fingers. Two, I can do sort of an assisted finger walk, so I can use my other hand to like lift or push his head to finger walk this thing in deeper. So now I'm getting in deeper. The other thing you can do is just an assisted pull. So an S grip is a really good way to do this. This is an S grip here where I just interlock my fingers, 2 hooks, where I can just pull it through. And from here, I'm going to come not very high off the ground. I'm going to go on my active toes. My hips come off the ground, and I'm going to drive forward off my toes. And this is usually enough pressure to choke somebody. If my arm if this arm is deep enough. This isn't always a fast choke, like submissions where we apply pressure and they tap. This might be you apply pressure and you want to increase your level of pressure kind of from 10% to 20 to 30 slowly. Meanwhile, they'll slowly be shutting down and then they'll tap out. So one more time, once I've gotten this head and arm choke setup position, head and arm setup position, keeping my head against his head, I dismount by knee cutting across to the side. I put my hips on the floor. Now I'm gonna get this arm deeper underneath, either by finger walking, or picking up his head and finger walking, or pulling the thing in. Some combination just to get this nice and deep. And then I'll connect my hands. I like an S grip because I really can be pulling here. Keep my head against his head. And now I'm flat. My butt comes off the ground a little and I'm driving forward. That's usually all I need. Some people recommend changing your angle out further. So like you'd be all completely set up. And then some people recommend coming out here because you can drive in at a slightly different angle. I've always only needed to lay basically next to the person and drive off my toes. If she goes for an elbow escape on this side, I'm actually also going to turn to face this way. So if she turns to face this way, just as a mnemonic, I also turn to face this way. So when she turns on her side, I also turn to face this way. And the body positioning that I did to compose this other position, technical mount or triple attack, is I put my heel against the front of her hip and I slid my knee up behind her head. And now I'm in another kind of mount. People call this technical mount. When I came up, we called it triple attack because there's 3 common attacks. One of them is this sort of hanging choke or half Nelson choke, and that's the one that we're gonna do. But first, let's just do this movement a few times. I would recommend with your partner, do this movement a few times first. She's turning into a fetal pose, if you don't know the elbow escape. And what I'm doing is, in response to her turning into that fetal pose, I slide my knee up behind her head, and I post my foot in front of her hip bone. So I should end up here. And don't be too floaty. You do still want to be making them claustrophobic. So one last time, the movement to practice first is she turns into a fetal position and I slide my knee up behind her head and my knee is up in the air, my foot is posted not way out here, but right up against her hip bone. One of the first things I like to do every time I get to this position, actually, is to push her tricep. When I push her tricep, she fights against that and actually lets me come underneath her arm, and then I'm already in position to finish this choke. One of the other things she does when she pushes her arm towards me is possibly give me an armbar and so forth. And when I push the tricep, I can also catch a gift wrap. So there's a lot of good, this is just a grip here. So a lot of benefits to me pushing the tricep on top as soon as I get here. So we'll include that detail. She turns on her side. I'm going to go to triple attack and push her tricep. When she goes over my arm, when she retracts her elbow, it's a perfect time to pass her collar. So I reach under her head and pass that collar. You notice I flip it over. It's just a little better grip for this hand. Now this hand goes behind her head, and I sit up, and I'm kind of hanging her by her lapel, which I've reached around her head to grab. So one time, real time, here. There's the choke right there. One of the attack positions from mount that I can get into, that's a mount sub position where she's very vulnerable, is anytime either she makes a mistake and an arm gets extended, and I catch it kind of next to my ribs, which is to say over my leg and under my arm, and it's sort of trapped at my ribs. You know, she only has one effective defending arm anymore. So chokes get easier because they're harder to defend because she only has one arm to defend with and so forth. It's basically a mistake to let your arm get trapped under there. So I'm, of course, going to be trying to trap it there. So the way I'm going to do that is from mount, I like to cut under the hand. So even if you lock your hands to your chest really good, I can usually cut under the hand and then cut back with my elbow. This is just a straight peel both ways. Peel underneath and then cut back with your elbow, and you should be able to catch the arm here. So it's a very simple entry.
and I like that. I'm going to add one more piece to further immobilize the bottom person. I'm going to cut under the hand, back with my elbow. I'm going to lean over here so I've still got it trapped. C-grip her wrist and try to extend my arm so I can just lean on it. So this right here, I would say would be my ideal position here for when their arm is trapped at my ribs, if I'm going for the finish that we're going to go for, which is the mounted triangle. So one more time, I'll do all the parts. It's just cut in and then cut back with my elbow, lean away from this wrist, and so I can have a stiff arm that I can just lean on. That's always more powerful. And then pin her arm to the ground. This is where we're going to start for this one. Let's think of this in 3 stages. The first stage is to control the arms. Second stage is to set up the choke, and the third is going to be to finish the choke. So phase 1, I come underneath, I chop back and bring my knee up, and I pin her arm out. I do this, make sure you don't use a bent arm too. Lean away, use a straight arm, okay? Arms are controlled, that's phase 1. Phase 2, to start setting myself up, I have 3 errands to run, one over here, here, and here. I'm gonna step on her arm, pick up her head, and base here, because I might get thrown if she starts bucking. Okay, and now it's the choke time. This is the beginning of setting up the choke. Now I'm gonna bring my leg underneath her head, switch my posting hand so that I can shove her head basically into my hamstring so I get connection on that side of the neck. And I can bring my knee over my leg. Now I can pass the arm. And I like to turn sideways and get like a shearing, which can finish the choke. But it could be true that you need to finish a little more conventionally. So I'm going to triangle my legs. But I'm not going to roll to the bottom position to finish the triangle, which a lot of people know the triangle from there, so they might just roll off and try to finish from guard. I'm not going to do that exactly. I'm just going to rock onto this knee tip and let both feet come off the ground and then cross and then come back down. I can squeeze from here, but I can actually also employ the 2 hands pulling the back of the head like we do from the guard also. So first control the arms, come in, bring my leg up, trap this arm, pin this arm. Now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. I'm going to really jam this in. Passing the arm is going to make this choke way better, so make sure you pass the arm across the face. I can bring my knee over and turn sideways. You can try just shearing. Right now I have 2 hands on the floor because my belly is keeping her arm where it is. I can try just shearing, or I can rock the whole structure onto the tip of my right knee, cross my calf here, not in a triangle, it doesn't have to be perpendicular, they can stay parallel, come back to the ground. I can squeeze from here, or I can pull the head up and get my finish there. Now, it definitely helps to lean this way and try to almost straighten this leg, almost straighten that leg. I'm trying to get so deep before I continue. And then it's the arm. I'm gonna get the arm across as low as I can, like not across the eyes or nose, but if I can across the mouth or under the chin. And then I'm gonna put my knee on the ground. If I start shearing and all I'm doing is moving her head, then it's possible that it'll be more helpful to step this knee back over and shear with it on her shoulder. So when I shear her shoulder, I'm pushing really the right thing into her neck. Sometimes to finish the triangle, if you're not getting it here and you feel the head moving, then stepping back over and shearing here might be the right thing, because now I am pushing, this is what you want to do, push her arm into her neck. From here, we can go to other stuff. I can pin her arm and start attacking. But the other thing I can do is, and I like to kind of cup the shoulder to make sure that I can assist her here. I can turn her up on her side and step my foot up. And now her arm is in a very bad position over my leg. So we're going to enter like we entered arm at ribs, but this time we're just going to step the foot up. So, and you can close that as much as you want. Yep. It's almost always possible to slide here under the wrist. So we're going to do that. Now my leg is like giving pressure, if not sliding up, so that when I cut back, I have the arm trapped. If I want to step up, I'll usually cup the shoulder blade and kind of help turn her on her side and step up. You notice that I'm creating not just a straight up and down post, but one with like pressure in to the back of her shoulder, where the shoulder meets the, where the arm meets the body. And I can reach back, bend this over my leg. And then I just hold the elbow here. Hold the elbow, and I can push this forward. So I do support my hand with my elbow dropping into the same plane so that I can push forward. Some people will tap right here. But if you have somebody flexible, and there are flexible people in the room, then you're going to just support your wrist by putting your elbow in the same forward plane, and then you can push forward kind of infinitely. So the entry one more time. You may need to offset like this. If it's hard to get in, don't just let your fingers lead. Just have a straight arm and just jam it in this way. My knee's starting to get pressure, and now I pick her up. I've got a nice sort of bit of a kickstand here, and I'll reach back and bend her arm over my leg to make sure it's locked in. I just get a cupping grip at her tricep, drop my elbow into the same plane as my wrist to push forward. And it really does not take much for many people to finish that Kimura from here. So high mount is anytime her arms come up or out, and I'm able to get my knees up into the armpit creases. This is a major mistake that a jiu-jitsu person probably won't make, but just so you know, it gives me the same thing. Somebody who didn't know jiu-jitsu their arms might be flailing anyway, but a jiu-jitsu person, they're trying to have their elbows on the ground. The reason she wants to have her elbows on the ground, just to talk for a second about the bottom person's mindset in jiu-jitsu, is when her elbows are down and I can't go any further north, my hips are in position for her to bridge, and then I'll have to put my hands down. So go ahead, bridge. Yeah, now my hands are busy. So this starts her escapes. So she wants me down at the elbow level. She's trying to keep me down there, and I would like to get up here. By the way, I don't want to go outside the arms. She's like just going to get away. So I'm trying to scrape the arms. She can't keep her elbow on the ground at the same time as she defends her neck. So if I learn how to bug the neck so that the arm comes up, then we're in a good spot. I'm going to put my forearm down on one side of her neck, elbow lower than my hand. So I'm here, and I'm gonna sink in a little bit. This isn't gonna tap the person, so don't expect necessarily the person to tap out because of a little bit of neck pressure, but I'm putting neck pressure here, and then without moving around her neck, I'm actually moving through her neck. I'm gonna reach for the shoulders, and it becomes very uncomfortable. I've sunk in, and I'm turning the head, and then I'm going to open her jaw by the corner right here. So I'm here, I grab this, and I'm going to open this space, and now the arm always comes up at least a little bit. There's always a space that comes up, and now I've come underneath one, and I can start pulling the other one up. That's a really good way to get under at least your first one. So people will not want to keep their elbows on the ground if their neck is being just attacked. Here, I bug the neck so that I can slide up, and I can pull this one up. And now I'm in high mount. And her arms, of course, are out of position. This is a better attack position for me. And let's say he does lift his elbow. Now I have to like sort of amble up, right? I have to go from knee to knee, and it's sort of awkward. But if I have my hand on the ground, you know, I say this a lot of times when you guys switch to triple attack 2 or technical mount 2, is that moving with your hands on the ground is way easier. So do have a hand on the ground. So you're going to have one here and one here. And when you get your person to move, I can slide, actually both my legs slid, you saw at the same time, and that's because all my weight was on this hand, so it's just an easier way to move, okay? So don't just do this with this hand floating. You're gonna use it to sort of, not pull yourself up, but you're gonna put your weight on it so that you can slide up. Once you get up to this position, don't forget that the number one thing is maintaining your position, okay? So a couple of notes on that. If this was a fight situation, I would tell you from this position, throw a couple of punches, and then base. And then throw a couple of punches, and then base, okay? So we don't just do this forever because of course somebody on the bottom is gonna buck and go wild and try and get out. And I don't wanna fall off when that happens. So likewise, in jiu-jitsu, in a non-striking situation, the most important thing is my position. So I do wanna think about having my hands ready to go to the ground at all times. Also, part of keeping my position is keeping the progress I just worked so hard to get. So if somebody starts trying to scoot north, you can hold their top of their head. It becomes hard to move north. Okay, so that'll keep your progress. So what he might think about doing from here is putting pressure here and wiggling north, shoulder walking north until his elbows are on the floor. Go ahead. Until his shoulders on the elbows are on the ground. Yeah. So rather than just let that happen, do that again. I hold on to my guy and I keep these arms, never forgetting that if he starts bucking side to side, I need to think about catching myself with my arm. I just don't want to skim over the fact that the position is the most important thing. But with his arms out like this, it is going to be easy to pin one out for Americana, the one that we're going to do right now. So with his arms up and out of position like this, I can kind of pick one. I'm going to put two hands on the pale side of one of the arms, and pin it to the floor like this. Put my elbow down, and then I'm going to come under his tricep and over my arm. Put my temple, look away from him, put my temple on my hand. And now two motions finish this submission. Painting the mat with the back of his hand and lifting his elbow. In combination, it's something the shoulder doesn't want to do. So I'm going to both paint down the mat and lift his arm at the same time. When you do both, it starts to be uncomfortable. So his arms were up. I was in high mount. I'm going to put two hands on the pale side of one arm, probably the one on top, because this one's going to run into the other one. So that's why I picked this one. Pin this. I put my elbow in the crook of the neck. And now I'm going to come underneath and catch this here. Look away from him, put my temple on the back of my hand. That's helping pin his hand to the ground. And now I'm going to paint and lift the elbow at the same time. And that's a shoulder submission there. He becomes uncomfortable either in front or in the back. That lifted to one side, and I was able to slide this knee up. The next move for me from here is going to be like it was before, to reach back for the elbow, but this time I don't need to fully pick it up and put my knee down. I'm just going to pick it up enough that I can draw a circle with my heel, and now I'm sitting on my person. I've got my leg under that arm instead of my knee in that spot. Okay. So S mount, the moments are that I slide a knee up, and then I'll pick up the elbow enough to draw a circle with my heel. And that is the way that I recommend getting into S mount, is to draw a circle with your heel. Rather than, you could think about your starting position, and you might think, well, if the end position is this, I'm just going to pick up and turn my leg over. But there are people with flexibility issues that's not going to work for, and this doesn't get the same tightness that this does. Like Chris feels me gathering his arm with my leg when I draw the circle, in a way that this is just giving him space to possibly escape. So I'm not into like giving him space whenever possible. So I slid the one knee high, like how high? Like above his head high, like very high. And then this one, I turn over. And you notice that I'm shifting my weight as I turn my leg over. I'm shifting my weight so that I'm upright, sitting on my sits bone on him. So when I get to here, Chris feels my weight, I'm actually sitting on him, okay? So let's do the whole entry, and then I'll show you the armbar that follows. So I did something, this one came up, and I decide S mount's what I want, so I get my knee absolutely as high as I can. It's even higher than his head. Pick up the other one, circle. There's actually like sort of a bite here. I'll actually bite with my leg here. And now I'm upright, sitting on Chris, and now I'm gonna underhook this arm, especially if it's on top. Their arms are always gonna be kind of like this. Especially if this one's on top, I'm gonna thread underneath. And I just put my hand here, I'm not holding his arm. I'm just here, and I put my hand over here, next to him, and I can swing this leg over, and I can sit down where I can hit an armbar here. So I did something that made his arm come up. I slid up, I picked this one up, and now I'm sitting on him. I say to the kids, like, show them your dirty foot. Like, show them the bottom of your foot. And now, especially if his arms are crossed with the one closer to me on top, I only need to interlace our arms, lace, base on the far side of the hip. So not over here, because now I'm falling backwards, but here where I'm leaning forward. I want to be leaning forward and toward his feet, because then my leg is really light and I don't have to be flexible to get it over his head. I think one of the things that people run into from S-mount is they're like it's hard sometimes for people to have the hip flexibility. It feels like, but if you lean way over here and you take the counterweight, which is your big bowling ball head, and you put it over here, your leg gets super light actually. And this is, if you can get into a car, into and out of a car, you're flexible enough to do this. Full move, lug the neck, slide up. Pick this, I have a hand over here for base just while I lean to pick my leg, draw a circle with my leg. Now lace, base, lean to bring this leg over, and I sit beside him. To finish the armbar, I would be making C grips on his hand and sitting back to hyperextend.